Most architects and landlords use proven designs over and over again. That leads to uninspired buildings and neighborhoods that eventually feel like living in a giant spreadsheet. That sparked my interest in doing better and become an architect eventually. Architecture is a discipline that sits somewhere between a professional service and art. It's clear that architects need to juggle with legal, technical, functional and budgetary requirements, but on the other hand side, they are usually the only advocate for identity and beauty of a building. Traditionally, the form of a house resulted from rules of craftsmanship. The roof defined the shape of the building, load-bearing walls defined the interior, and design was basically limited to choosing established techniques or some ornamental decoration. Exceptional projects with exceptional architects, however, expanded the rules of craftsmanship and the possibilities of composing remarkably, from the ancient pyramids to the Pantheon in Rome, the St. Peter's Dome in Rome, to the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. It's astonishing how composition techniques have advanced. Today, technology no longer restrains our creative choices. Creativity is no longer reserved to landmark projects or exceptional architects, but that requires new processes that make sure we use that freedom wisely. Designing a building is usually an iterative process between analyzing requirements and options and synthesizing ideas and approaches to eventually find a gestalt that combines practical value or practical function and symbolic identity and aesthetical values. We usually combine two approaches. One is outside in, so starting with the environment and the meaning of the building towards the interior, and the other one is inside out, starting with the internal requirements and functionality of a building, and then eventually form the environment and contribute to city planning. Doing that, we usually add components one to another. That's additive practice, like piling or stacking, as we see on the left-hand side, or multiplying units, or adding minor components, or confronting one body with another. That's all additive practices that architects and men are using since they left living in caves. Today, with modern tools, architects can complement that approach with subtractive design. So they can start with a whole and then reduce and remove material to find the eventual form of the building, like sculptors do chiseling stone. Information theory tells us that the informational value of a perception is the reciprocal of its probability. So an expected experience or perception is redundant. Redundancy sounds like negative, but it's not. We want the world to work mostly like expected. AI kind of illustrates how expected information can be used to fill gaps. So we see this gable that has been complemented by AI based on experience with similar buildings and similar pictures that it has seen, and that's what men are doing as well. Redundancy alone is boring, but it's also an excellent stage for the unexpected, for complexity. In this picture we see a lot of frames that help us with orientation, and then easier to digest the complexity and unexpected that we find inside the frames. The primary perception is the simple, the redundant forms. We start usually understanding the simplest and then go towards the more complex ones, and so the simple and redundant information is the primary perception, and the secondary is complexity. That's why we understand this last figure as a rectangle with a broken angle. Here we see an example where we have a regular barn, kind of a barn that has a gabled roof and a regular shape. So that's the redundant part, and then kind of we understand that this is absolutely astonishing. It's balancing on one end. And Herzog Dümmeron even took it one step further. They kind of piled a bunch of gable roof houses on top of each other and formed a complex building. But is complexity always better? Do we want all buildings to be that complex? Maybe we need to find the right balance, and nature can help us here. In we usually say that non-linear forms are organic or natural, but that's not entirely true. It's true that there are no straight lines in nature, but it's also true that there is virtually no unnecessary complexity in nature. So it's all functional. And finding that right balance is an iterative process, like here Rafael Moneo did in Murcia for the City Hall. He started with a golden-shaped rectangle and then added floors and openings and columns and moved them around until he eventually found a balance that convinced him. Today, we can use parametric design to digitally define the building and then kind of use technology to find that balance. And Zaha Hadid has proven with remarkable and stunning buildings as well as kind of harmonic and minor buildings that this technique can be used successfully. Coming back to Münster's Prinzipalmarkt, where we see this redundant gable here, that's not designed, as I said, but we can see here kind of what architect Richard Ackermann made of it. So he kind of designed what he found appropriate, a good balance for Münster's Prinzipalmarkt. Sculptural design is more than most architects do today, but it can add a lot of value in finding the right balance. It makes buildings more attractive, longer lasting, and more valuable, and therefore more sustainable. And that's kind of my mission, to design such buildings, and I ask you to join me in that.